We begin with the deadly Palm Sunday bombings in Egypt. 2 churches were hit. More than 40 people are dead, dozens injured. ISIS has claimed responsibility. The attacks come less than a week after President Trump met with Egypt's president at the White House, where the 2 leaders vowed to fight terrorism. Today, Mr. Trump condemned the bombings and said he has great confidence in President al-Sisi. Terry Okita has our report. We warn you, the images are disturbing.
At the time of that attack, ISIS vowed to escalate violence against Christians in Egypt. And now, Elaine, it appears they've done just that.
Good evening. First, there was the massacre in Paris, followed by the manhunt and the massive show of mourning. Now we are seeing something different. It can fairly be described as a backlash and public anger in a growing number of cities in the Muslim world, and it's sparking fears that we may be close to something of a turning point in what started, after all, with the publication of political cartoons.
2 bombs have exploded at a cathedral in the town of Jolo in the southern Philippines. At least 18 people were killed and scores others wounded. The first blast occurred during Sunday Mass, sending churchgoers rushing outside where a second bomb detonated. The attack on the island of Jolo comes less than a week after voters there rejected its inclusion in a Muslim autonomous area. In other parts of the Mindanao Island group, which includes Jolo, the referendum was overwhelmingly approved.
Well, good morning, Robin. The Palm Sunday terror attacks in Egypt are raising fears this morning of what could be next from ISIS at the beginning of a week of great religious significance around the world as Jews mark Passover and Christians prepare for the Holy Week of Easter.
Our priority is first the defeat of ISIS, remove them from access to the caliphate, because that's where the threat to the homeland and to so many other homelands of our coalition partners is emanating from.
Law enforcement authorities this morning are paying close attention to what ISIS had to say after the Egypt attack, that more bloody attacks are coming, targeting what they called the Crusaders, Christians from the West.
So police here in the U.S. extra vigilant?
Absolutely, indeed.
Religious violence is on the rise. Just take a look at this map from the Pew Research Center. Countries in red and yellow have the highest incidence of sectarian violence. Note in particular the Middle East and North Africa. The number of countries mired in sectarian strife has doubled in the last 3 years. In fact, according to this report, about 75% of the world's population, more than 5 billion people, live in a country with high to very high incidence of religious violence.
Bloodshed, conflicts, loss of lives, destruction. These events cannot be traced down from a single cause. Religious violence. Religious violence, usually caused by religious differences, has prompted a lot of bloodshed in the past. Many wars were fought for the sake of religions, and many lives were lost just to assert dominance. But what really sparked religious violence to unfold? Is it the scriptures, the interpretation of the scriptures, or the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of human beings? If religions are supposed to promote peace and oppose violence, then why are they so destructive and cause so much harm and suffering to people?
Religions caused a lot of bloodshed in the past. Many wars were fought for the sake of religions. The subject of religious violence is still a contentious issue, and religious wars are still fought in some parts of the world. For a long time, world religions have been a hindrance in the progress of our civilization. There are people who strongly wish for the destruction of the world so that they can go to heaven and live there forever. In the context of religions, it is probably the most violent thought which one can find in many religious scriptures with necessary justification. It is sad but true that then and now religions have been the source of great violence and suffering to many people. Religious violence is not only caused by physical acts of aggression. It can be expressed in various explicit and implicit ways to discriminate, demean, antagonize, minimize, or harm a particular group of people. Also,
religious violence is not always caused by religious groups only.
Secular groups may also incite religious violence or aggravate religious passions to suit their political and ideological agendas. According to HinduWebsite.com, there are few known forms of religious violence. First is religious wars. Religious wars are wars triggered in the name of religion, which are easier propaganda to unite a group of people to contradict others. Many wars were fought in the past either to spread particular religions or destroy rival faiths. Most notorious among them were the Roman conquest, Muslim invasion, and Spanish invasions in Asia, Europe, Africa, and Latin America. Millions of people died in such wars and entire nations were wiped out. Second is the religious persecution. Religious persecution is the systematic mistreatment of an individual or group of individuals as a response to their religious beliefs or affiliations or lack thereof. Medieval India witnessed religious persecution on a massive scale by Muslim rulers. The persecution took on many forms, including overtaxation and reducing people to utter poverty. Millions of people died due to the cruelty, violence, and ill treatment perpetrated by the Muslim rulers in the subcontinent. Religious persecution was also practiced in Europe, Africa, and Americas for a long time. Subtle forms of persecution still happen in some parts of the world. Third is gender violence. Gender violence, also known as gender-based violence or gendered violence, is a term used to denote harm inflicted upon individuals and groups that is connected to normative understandings of their gender. Women and girl children are always been the victim of religious violence. In the past, women proved to be the biggest victims of religious wars. They were subject to rape, abduction, slavery, forceful marriages, and killing as part of the political strategy of the aggressors to establish political dominance through religious wars and propagate their faith with impunity. In many Muslim-majority countries, minority women are still exposed to threats and personal harm by religious fanatics and extremists. Fourth is the destruction of sacred places. One of the most notorious forms of religious violence is the destruction and desecration of religious places. In medieval India, Muslim rulers plundered and destroyed thousands of Hindu temples and built mosques in their place. They used sacred images from the destroyed temples as stepping stones in the construction of secular buildings. Destruction and desecration of religious places still happen in many countries to intimidate minority groups or incite religious violence.
Forced conversion is one of the major forms of religious violence. Before, forced conversion is used to secure the loyalty of the people and propagate their belief even if it is against their will. Fear of death, discrimination, arbitrary taxation, fines, or persecution are some of the reasons why some people are forced to convert. There are also cases that instead of giving scary actions, privileges and incentives are given, like monetary rewards, social or political benefits are given to the people who are willing to be converted. Minorities are easily affected with this scheme. Next is the false propaganda. This is a form of verbal violence where people spread false and negative information about the opposing religion. The leaders, tradition, beliefs, and deities are targeted to weaken the importance and influence. Its purpose is to confuse the people and mislead them about their faith so they can easily convince them to change the religion. Discrimination. There is also discrimination in religion that has been persistent and pressing problem since ancient times. Discrimination in religion happens especially in countries where one religion has a clear advantage over the other. People are discriminated because of their religious beliefs, race, or nationality. This tends to discriminate between the believers and non-believers of subject matter to unfair, unequal, and unjustified treatment. Next is the religious extremism. It is considered the most overt and extreme form of violence. Religious extremism. It is considered the most overt and extreme forms of religious violence, used by overzealous individuals to form dominance or to oppress hostility and disapproval. People indulge in aggressions and violence behavior as a countermeasure to protect their own faith or to oppose others, used by religious people who are deeply committed to their religion with ambitious political aims.
One of the main purposes of religion is to promote peace, harmony, to improve morality, and bring out the best of humanity. However, some religions end up doing the opposite. Instead of promoting peace to humanity, religions became one of the causes of violence. They ended up confusing some people to how and why they came to bring violence and harm to humanity. Some of these were caused by the following. Number 1. Scriptures. Religious scriptures may influence violent behaviors if they seem to believe something aggressive to be some kind of virtuous thing to do, which encourages people to be part of God's war against evil because of the promise of heavenly rewards. Number 2. Beliefs and ideologies. Because of the difference of religious beliefs and ideologies that are reinforced by scriptures or tradition, it may promote aggressive behavior. Some people are encouraged to indulge in violence and may create a divide against those who contradict their beliefs and ideologies. Number 3. Politics. The politics of divide and rule often provoke communal passions which leads to violent clashes. Religious violence is used by rulers to enforce discipline, loyalty, and obedience. Certain political ideologies also tend to distinguish other people because of their beliefs and values, which bring about resentment and hostility. Number 4. Economic interest. Because of the wide disparities in income or standards of living among religious groups or the unfair policies of government, they somehow brought favor to certain religious groups against others, which may lead to conflict or violence. Number 5. Community interest. Religious violence may result if the interests of one community are threatened. Aggressive behaviors may rise in claim to protect them, which in turn may provoke other communities to participate in violence. Number 6. Exploitation. Religions and their emotional appeal have often been used by vested interests to exploit others by appealing to their sentiments and religiosity, and when intolerable, people may rise to express anger and may lead to violence.
Are religions inherently negative forces in contemporary human experience, as many critics claim? Or are religions always sources for human flourishing, as people of faith and defenders of faith often assert? Is religious extremism and the violence associated with it the true face of religion? Or is religious extremism a perversion of faith, enacted by those who misrepresent or misunderstand the true heart of all religions?
Should influence people by discouraging and condemning acts of violence through religious means. Furthermore, they should teach people that it's not them versus everyone, that people who are not part of their religion will go to hell or somewhere equivalent, but instead discourage religious isolation and encourage the spread of love and compassion towards one another. Let us all celebrate our differences.